On January 22, 1879, the British Army left its camp unfortified at Isandlwana. They left it open. They left it exposed. By mid-afternoon, it was surrounded. More than 1,000 men would not leave that valley. The camp stood beneath a steep, dark hill in northern Natal, near the border of Zululand. Isandlwana rose abruptly from the plain, dark, angular, dominating the morning. Below it, the British encampment stretched across open ground. Not a defensive position chosen for battle, a stopping point on a march. The grasslands sloped outward in most directions, offering clear fields of fire but little protection. No ravine deep enough to block a rush, no river tight against a flank, no forest thick enough to slow an approach. Visibility was broad, protection was minimal. Tents sat in rows, supply wagons stood apart, not pulled into a wall. No trenches, no earth embankments, no laager, no fortified redoubt. Just open ground, shallow undulations, scattered rocky ridges, and a camp laid out as if the day would remain routine. A man could walk from one end of it to the other and never touch a barrier. In colonial warfare, British columns often fortified their camps by habit. Wagons drawn together, perimeters formed, fields of fire arranged. It was not universal. It depended on judgment, but it was common when the enemy's strength was uncertain. At Isandlwana, that step was not taken. The column had advanced rapidly into Zululand. Commanders expected movement, minor engagements, scattered resistance, not a concentrated army prepared to fight in open terrain. Earlier that morning, Frederick Thesiger, 2nd Baron Chelmsford, divided his column. Reports suggested Zulu movement to the east. Believing he could intercept and disrupt what he assumed was a dispersing force, he marched out with mounted units and artillery. He took mobility. He took heavier guns. He took a substantial portion of manpower. The decision was tactical. It was also decisive. In the camp, fewer than 2,000 British regulars and colonial auxiliaries remained. They were not militia. They were trained infantrymen armed with martini-henry rifles, breech-loading weapons capable of sustained, disciplined fire. In earlier imperial campaigns, rifle volleys delivered at range had broken assaults long before attackers could close. That memory shapes posture. That memory shapes calm. It is the kind of calm that makes an open camp feel safe. In the camp, the day still had ordinary sounds. Leather creaked when straps were tightened. Metal rang softly when equipment was set down. Men moved between tents and wagons with the rhythm of routine, the kind that tells you the world is still under control. Then a different rhythm began to form outside the perimeter. Not loud at first, not dramatic, just a sense of movement that didn't belong to the camp's routine. Because in open warfare, the enemy does not need to break your courage. They only need to break your shape. And the camp at Isandlwana lacked the one thing that turns pressure into survivable pressure. Depth, not comfort, not confidence. A second position already prepared before the first one fails. The camp had no second position. And once the first line began to thin, there was nowhere for it to fold back into. Several miles away, concealed in folds of landscape northeast of the camp, the Zulu army waited. The land dipped and rose in long, shallow waves. From certain vantage points, it looked empty. But behind ridgelines and in tall grass, thousands of warriors lay hidden. They had marched through the night. They had been discovered unexpectedly earlier in the morning. The engagement that followed was not planned for that exact hour, but the army adapted. At their head stood Nchingwayo Kamahole Koza, commanding in the name of Chetshwayo Kampande. The force under his control numbered somewhere between 20 and 25,000. This was not a spontaneous gathering. Zulu military organization rested on an age-based regimental system. Men of similar age groups formed Ibuto, regiments that trained, drilled, and lived in disciplined formations. Cohesion was social as well as military. Command authority was understood. Movement orders were obeyed. Their principal weapon was the short stabbing spear, designed for close combat. Their shields were large, built for advancing under threat. Their doctrine, known widely as the Horns of the Bull, was not symbolic language. It described geometry. The chest advances directly into the enemy line and fixes it. The horns extend outward along both flanks. Then, once extended, they curve inward. The loins remain in reserve, ready to reinforce success. Encirclement is not chaos. It is timing. It is spacing. It is restraint. It is control. The warriors lay low in the grass. Shields pressed down, spears held close. They did not rise early. They did not reveal themselves prematurely. They waited. Late in the morning, British mounted scouts crested a ridge. They had expected scattered Zulu elements. Instead, they saw movement across a broad front. They had expected hundreds. They were looking at tens of thousands. Across the valley, the concealment dissolved at once. Thousands rose in coordinated motion. The shock was immediate. It is one thing to imagine an enemy. It is another to watch the ground itself produce an army. Reports ran to the camp. Officers understood the scale of what approached. But scale alone does not determine outcome. Deployment does. The alarm traveled quickly through the camp at Isandlwana. Companies were ordered forward. Infantry extended into a long firing line to maximize rifle range and maintain overlapping fields of fire. The line stretched across open terrain, facing the advancing Zulu center. The first volleys were controlled and effective. At range, martini-henry rifles inflicted heavy casualties, but the formation did not disintegrate. The chest continued forward, and then the horns began to widen. Every extension required manpower. Every extension thinned density. They chose to stretch, and once a line stretches, its flanks become exposed. Here is the moment the day begins to tilt, not when the first shots are fired, not when casualties rise, but when the British line commits to covering a widening frontage without a second line behind it. From that moment, every correction becomes a subtraction, and no one is waiting behind them to replace what is lost. As pressure increased, the horns extended. Ammunition moved forward across open ground. Smoke thickened. The line strained to behave like a wall. But walls require thickness, and this line had length instead. Then it happened. First, pressure on a flank. Then, sightings behind isolated companies. Then, firing to the rear. A man in the line turns at the sound. He expects confusion. He sees shields where open ground had been. For a moment, orientation fails. The enemy is no longer in front of him. The field has rotated. A line that fires forward and backward at once becomes fragments. Retreat routes narrowed. The open camp offered no interior barrier, no fallback, no second shape. This is the snap point, not a speech, not a signal. The moment withdrawal requires moving toward the enemy instead of away from him. When that happens, the line is no longer fighting forward. It is surrounded. From that moment, survival becomes individual. Recovery becomes impossible. Midday passed into early afternoon. The line bent, then segments broke. Units fell back toward tents that were never built for defense. But tents are not barricades. Wagons standing apart do not form walls. Clusters formed. Clusters failed. The horns closed inward. The basin of the camp trapped what remained of organized resistance. Some attempted withdrawal toward the Buffalo River. Some reached it. Many did not. By the end of the day, more than 1,000 British and colonial troops lay dead. It was one of the British Army's worst defeats of the 19th century. But the mechanism was structural. The position could not absorb encirclement. The line had no depth. The column had been divided. As evening settled, the firing ceased. Zulu regiments withdrew in disciplined formation. The war continued. Months later, at the Battle of Isandlwana, concentrated artillery and rifle fire would end the kingdom's ability to confront British forces in open battle. But Isandlwana remained distinct, a modern firing line, surrounded, overcome, The British did not fall because they lacked courage. They fell because once the horns closed behind them, the structure collapsed inward. There was no longer a formation to save, only men inside a closing shape. Even empires, if they misjudge position, can be encircled.